Hey, folks, and welcome to another episode of 8 News Real Talk. I'm your host, Tannock Blair, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Julia Broberg.
Hello.
Julia, we have a lot of driving racing action to get to this week. We have two movies. They're both about Formula One racing, a sport I am familiar with, but I believe you were not before we watched both these films.
I was like, what's the difference between F1 and NASCAR? And Tanner went, I'm just kidding. He did not.
Yeah, I guess to speak to my experience a little bit, I got into watching Formula One in college, probably like 2016, 2017 or something. I had some friends who were really into it. And so I actually, I guess it was later. I think I started watching in the like 2018 season or something, right around the time that Drive to Survive came out, which is the Netflix documentary series. I think a lot of fans sort of got their start around that time as well, because it was a really good entry into the sport and getting to know it. So I've been watching for a long time. I have the extra context, I suppose, for these movies, but I'm so curious to see what you think of them, or like how much they made sense and things. I'm really curious. So before we get to it, we're going to start with the new film F1 or F1 the movie, depending on
Your circles.
yeah,
Your social circles. Who
What you
who you
prefer.
hang out with.
But this is the new film from Joseph Kosinski, produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. It's their follow-up sort of collaboration after Top Gun Maverick from a couple of years ago. Sort of interesting that it follows the same way that what is it called? Days of Thunder was a follow-up to the original Top Gun. They're following up Top Gun Maverick with another racing movie. But yeah, enough of me preambling about F1. What did you think of the movie?
This is a tough question. In my heart, I want to give this movie 5 stars.
Okay.
I want to give this movie 5 stars. Y'all didn't tell me that this was
Yeah.
a dad movie of the year.
Yes.
It is. It has the same. It's basically Top Gun Maverick, but with cars. And I didn't realize it was the same director because I loved Top Gun Maverick. Look, it's cheesy. Are the characters underdeveloped and kind of the plot is underdeveloped? Yeah, but I was feeling this hard. I cried at this film. Again, we can also chalk it up to the experience, like the circumstances that I saw it in. But I ate this movie up and I loved it. And let's say I was not excited to see this movie at
Yeah.
all. If anything, I was
Dreading it.
I was dreading watching this movie. When I found out it was 2.5 hours, I was like, oh my God. And I remember like sitting in the theater and it started and I was like, oh my God. It's got the Hans Zimmer score,
Yeah.
some techno beats over top, mixed in with some trash pop music.
Yeah.
I was like, this is amazing. So I'm going to go 5 star. And this is where people that watch this
Okay.
might hate me because I've given other stuff on the show. This is not a 5-star movie, but
Yeah.
in my heart, I'm giving this 5 stars.
I love that you're being true to your heart. And we should mention as well, you went to see this at Bowtie Cinema's new
Yes.
BTX theater. You got a sneak peek for that theater, which is now open to the public, right?
Yeah,
I think
it's
the BTX.
open. The arcade's open. They have duck pin bowling. They
Yeah.
have all new luxury recliners in all of their auditoriums, and 2 new BTX screens. So I got to see like a free screening of F1,
Yeah.
which was
and,
great.
and what is BTX for people who don't know?
It's basically similar to IMAX. It's
Yeah.
like Movieland's version of IMAX.
Cool.
So it's just bigger screens and
Louder sound.
louder sound. They have Dolby Atmos, like surround sound, so I could hear the cars flying behind me, which is really cool. So I think that definitely added to like me sitting in a dark, cool theater when it's 110 degrees outside and I have like a free popcorn and Coke, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is the greatest day of my life. And Brad Pitt is like, I'm gonna race fast.
Yeah.
And then he like,
And then he does it.
And then he does
that
it.
thing.
And Javier Bardem's like, you can't do this.
That's
Brad Pitt's
awesome.
like, yes, I can. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool that the Richmond area is getting, upgrades and things to their theaters. The Bird is also at the moment renovating their seats in the lower area. I can't wait till that opens up again. But yeah, I think by the sounds of it, that's a great way to experience this movie. I went to one of the Regal cinemas to see it in IMAX. Because I knew I wanted to get the full experience of the vroom vrooms.
as Charlie XCX would say.
And it's been part of the marketing too, because I don't know if you know this, because it's being produced by Apple Plus or Apple TV or whatever it is, the movie side of Apple. They released a haptic, what they call a haptic trailer, which is if you watched it on the Apple TV Plus app, if you watched this trailer, your phone would vibrate with the car racing stuff.
That would have got me. I would have been like, this is so freaking cool.
So all the hype around this movie has been building up in a pretty exciting way. And I was really excited to see it. I did not quite, in my heart, feel a 5-star experience.
No.
Unfortunately,
I was afraid
all
of this.
the issues that you pointed out before and what we'll get into when we get to spoiler talk does hold this back for me. Sort of in the same way that Mission Impossible was held back from its greatest moments.
I won't get up from my seat this time.
Yeah.
Because I understand.
Yeah, I do think I like this more than that movie. I'm going to go 3 stars. But yeah, it's we're going to have to get into spoiler talk to talk about all
Yes.
the greatness and some of the shortcomings of this movie. So let's do
I
that.
think I just hated the trailer. Like, I had to see the trailer because I go to see so many movies. I see so many trailers all the time. And if I don't like the trailer and I have to see it 50 times, I begin to resent the movie without having ever seen it.
Yeah.
And the review that I wrote before I saw it, because I listened to That Don't Impress Me Much by Shania Twain all the time, I was like, so you're Brad Pitt, that don't impress me much. And that's what I thought that this movie was going to be. But I
Right.
was proven wrong.
Yeah.
It did impress me much. Mucho, if you will.
Well, what is this movie about? I think it's pretty straightforward underdog sports movie. But
Yeah. Brad Pitt is a F1 driver who raced back like 30 years ago. His name's Sonny Hayes in this, but he got into a bad accident that kind of derailed his career. He was going to be one of the greats, but then he never got there. But then he gets asked back to drive by Javier Bardem, who was his old racing buddy back in the day. And now he has to face off against this young guy who's also like the hot new thing in F1 racing. And it's just about how they have to learn to work together to make this, happen and to win these races.
Yeah, it captures sort of one of the interesting, exciting things about the sport of F1, and that every team has 2 drivers, which means that those 2 drivers are theoretically working together to try and get points for their team, but there's always going to be rivalries between the 2 drivers because you're always going to be competing with the person who's in the exact same car as you. You're competing with other drivers as well, but if someone's in a way faster car than you, it's not really realistic to have a serious rivalry with them because you're not really at the same level. But if you're driving this essentially the same car, you can literally see who's the better driver, more clearly. And so I think this film did a really good job of something that's true to the sport, which is, that rivalry that forms between teammates and how they can overcome it or push each other to be better. That was really cool to see in this film. It's just a shame, if I can get to one of my biggest complaints of the film.
No, you can't.
It's just a shame that I think the actors, and especially Brad Pitt, are not delivering on the premise or what is supposed to be there for the characters.
100% agree, and this is going to be maybe kind of mean, but I think the work that Brad Pitt has had done to his face is prohibiting him from being able to facially act, which sucks because he needs to deliver some really strong emotional, controversial maybe, but I think the last time that Brad Pitt looked good and acted well in a movie was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood back in 2019 for me.
I agree.
But this, I don't know, I just think there needed to be more nuance to this character, and he was just kind of the bad boy that never grew up.
It seemed so good on paper. That was one thing I, when I was anticipating this film and excited for it, I thought, it could be a little generic and cliched in the sports underdog story. I thought it could be unrealistic with how it portrays F1 stuff. But one thing I thought was going to be a lock was, he's the perfect casting for this kind of character. Like a bit of a washed up has-been that's still got the charisma and still sort of is sort of like the kid who never grows up but is still really cool.
Yeah, but it was like, I still want to be that guy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he can play both sides where you can have the emotional beats of this guy needs to grow up, but at the same time we can also have fun watching him act like a kid and not growing up.
Agreed. I will say Damson Idris is the exception for me. I thought he did great. I really enjoyed his performance, and I like what he brought to the table. And I like Carrie, the lead female role in
Yeah,
this.
she plays the chief engineer on the team.
She's great. I just like her. But again, it just felt like everybody was just not bringing their A game. And we have some really great performers. Javier Bardem, I love, but he
I
was
was going to
kinda...
say, I was going to say, this is interesting actually that we disagree on this. I was going to say Bardem was the one who delivered in every scene in my mind. I actually really loved him in this film. And I think it was those scenes that Brad Pitt was perhaps the worst because you could like see he's acting alongside someone who's giving a lot and
Brad
he's
Pitt's
giving
just kinda going like
nothing.
this.
He is like asleep at the wheel, pun intended, throughout this whole movie. It's really, really crazy how I don't know if he just phoned it all in because he was, more focused on learning how to drive these cars, which is awesome. We'll get to this in a second, like how they did all of the action scenes. But yeah, I think like the biggest weakness of this film, for all of the weaknesses of the story and the cliched aspects, if you just had performances to deliver or a stronger script, I think this all would have come together so much better. It's so egregiously bad that is basically taking like 2 whole stars off of this for me. Is how bad Brad Pitt is in this movie.
I agree with that. I do definitely agree with that, and I could be convinced on that basis to knock me down. Because again, my heart is saying 5. My brain is saying more along the lines of like a 3, 3.5.
Yeah.
Because
well, let's talk about what's great about it then, and why you're sitting at a 5. Because I definitely feel this as well. The driving scenes of this movie are superb. They are really, really good. In the same way that Top Gun Maverick delivered that with the aerial sort of dogfighting stuff. The shots that they get in this and the practicality and the way that they went about shooting it. I mean, there are some truly like visceral experiences here where you feel like you're in the car. And there are some transcendent moments, especially that moment towards the end when Brad Pitt's flying or whatever.
I started crying. I did begin to cry at this moment because I'm insane. I think there were other things in play. But when that started happening, I was like, I felt, and I was like, oh my God, Julia. I felt a tear fall down. I was like, this is what they're hoping. I was like, am I really just that like person? But Sam.
That's one part that's actually incredible. This doesn't bother me personally, but for F1 fans, they will be sort of scratching their heads because a yellow flag would have been called for the crash for Lewis and the other driver. So he actually would have like slowly gone and finished the race on like a yellow flag lap.
Okay,
but
fair. But that wouldn't have made for a good movie.
Yeah, it would not have. I'm not saying they should have done that. I think like it all works the way it's done there. But I do hate the setup for that, which is like a conversation that Brad Pitt and sorry, what is her name?
Carrie.
Carrie, thank you. The conversation that they have on like the balcony of their hotel room in Vegas.
That whole forced romance plot bugged the crud out of me.
Yeah, not good. And I really don't like how he has to describe why he does racing. I would have preferred it that we can just feel it. We know he's experiencing that, that flow state, that like thing of flying. He didn't have to describe that he's chasing that feeling.
And then they do the really
beforehand.
cheesy, what's he doing? He's flying.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You're like, okay,
we get it.
yeah.
We know. We're there with him. We're all
Watched
flying.
2 hours of this build up to this moment.
Yeah.
We get it. We're not stupid. He's flying. I was like, oh my God. Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of an undercut to an otherwise brilliant moment to the movie.
Again, I feel like it delivers on really unique cinematography and these really gorgeous racing scenes. And then you have stuff like I get it, you have to pit the main female and the main guy to get together, but why?
No,
she should not go for a guy like Brad Pitt. He's a loser. Not like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no reason why someone in her position and somebody as smart as she would just... I just didn't like that whole thing where it's like she set herself up as this independent woman that would not go for a guy like that, and then he flashes like a plastic face smolder, and she's like, "Well, I guess we could get together," and I'm like, "No."
Now there are so many movies that sort of one of the great things about this film is how technical it is, how it's all about like, you know, building the car, racing the car. Like it's people being good at their job movies. I don't know if there's sort of like
Oh, I
almost
love
a genre into itself of just people being hyper competent. I think Ford v Ferrari is that basically. And yeah, those type of movies are compelling. They don't need the extra Hollywood like shoehorned in, especially when the the emotions of it just don't click because your performers aren't delivering.
And they could have cut down some time from this movie. If they cut out all their little romantic scenes together, that scene right there, we could have knocked this thing down to like 2 hours.
It is a long movie. It's about 2.5, maybe just shy.
Feel that way necessarily.
No, it doesn't.
I was kind of.
It does
I was
feel.
grooving.
It does breeze along pretty. The pacing's pretty good throughout. But yeah, I wanted to ask, what did you think of the actual F1 like rules and things? Because there is a big plot point to this movie of they are a low tier team, which means they don't have much money, they don't have very good cars, and so they have to get, I would say,
Creative,
generously creative. You could generously say they have to get creative with how they get their points, but ultimately it's just cheating.
I was about to say I was kind of annoyed by that. Like it's literally they're like Plan C, chaos, and it's just Brad Pitt running into every thing on the side of the road to put debris in the road, so they have to bring out the cars that clean. And I was like, oh, I thought they were gonna win by like merit. That maybe would make me feel a little better if they won by like deserving it and not just cheating.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, whatever. Again, I was like, car go fast. That makes me happy.
I kind of loved that about it. So it's unrealistic, obviously. Formula One is interesting because unlike other sports where if you break a rule or something, you get disqualified usually. Like it's a pretty hard set thing. I think of like track races or whatever. If you make a false start or something, you just get disqualified from the race a lot of the times. It's not even a warning or anything like that. But F1 is interesting. It is kind of true to this, that because things are happening in the race all the time and people are, you know, making overtakes and hitting each other or coming off the road, there are certain leniencies to breaking certain rules because of they have to allow for that in a safety kind of way. Like if someone goes off the track and because they had to avoid a crash and they come back on, the FIA might make them have a 5-second penalty or something. The FIA is like the referee sort of governing body. They might give you like penalties or fines and things, but they won't disqualify you from the race outright. I guess there are ways to get disqualified, but I don't think in my time watching I've ever seen someone get properly disqualified from a race. You would have to do something pretty egregious. Like in this film, you could get away with what they're doing for maybe one race or something, especially if, you know, they don't explicitly, they're very careful not to explicitly, like Brad Pitt doesn't tell anyone what he's doing directly. Everyone just sort of implicitly figures it out.
Chaos.
You could get away with that for like one race, but I think if you were doing it for multiple races,
they would catch on. They're not, again.
It's pretty clear what you're doing.
It's not like, oops, I ran into the barriers again.
Yeah, I think you would probably get caught out eventually, or pretty quickly.
Not if you're Brad Pitt.
But I did really like, because something that I was concerned about with this movie was that it would do the Hollywood thing of, even though he's in a worse car, he's just going to drive it so well that he's going to beat out the fast cars.
Yeah.
And that is incredibly unrealistic. Like, that does not happen in F1. There's a reason that there's high-tier teams, low-tier teams. And oftentimes there are more interesting sort of competitions that are happening in the midfield because it's closer than what's happening at the top, the best teams. So I really like that it found perhaps unrealistic, but ultimately less Hollywood sort of workaround to make them underdogs throughout. It was really, really cool. I liked that.
Agreed.
Were you able to follow all of that stuff? Like they do a good job, I think, of having the commentators sort of just deliver exposition or rules of the sport that they probably wouldn't ever do in an actual race. But were you able to follow everything? Like, when there was a red flag and they stopped the race and like
Yeah.
they explained like the pit stop strategy and things. Did all of it make sense?
You're
Like what was
did
happening?
your stupid little brain comprehend what the big
I'm
car
just
go
curious
fast?
because I have all this context I was following, but I was wondering like how would someone without any knowledge of F1 like wanting to get into it or just follow the film, how does it
It's a good
feel?
question.
Yeah.
I think so. I think I was following along. Again,
Okay,
I think
cool.
context clues help because they do kind of go out there and explain. Like when he stopped and stalled at the start and acted like he didn't know how to turn it on, and everybody was like, he can't
Right.
even get his car started. And then they were like, wait, he might have an advantage here because
Yeah.
he's got warm tires. I was like,
Exactly.
okay,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So I think I was mostly following along. But yeah, once they were doing all the like cheating stuff, I was like, oh, they're not actually racing. They're just doing it on like technicality, which is kind of whatever. But Maverick would never do anything on technicality. I'm just saying. But yeah, I think I followed along. But it was definitely like weird to not have any like prior knowledge of F1 stuff. But I think I grasped it.
Okay, that's
hopefully.
really cool. I was worried that would be something that would hold, be a point of entry that would be a struggle for new fans or people who aren't fans that are just looking for a fun racing movie. But
I don't think that should discourage anybody. Just because if you
Cool.
know absolutely nothing about F1, you can still enjoy this movie to its full
Awesome.
potential because that is me.
great.
Or maybe I'm just too stupid to know that I didn't know what was going on. That could also be a possibility.
We talked a little bit about how awesome the action stuff is. They had the actual actors driving, and I think they were Formula 2 cars that were dressed up to look like F1 cars. They also used actual race footage from Formula 1 races and then just sort of like CGI'd in, the APX team's cars into it or changed the color of someone's car to look like whatever. But all of it worked so well. Like I couldn't tell what was like shot, what wasn't. It was incredibly well done.
Again, when I'm watching a movie like this, and this is exactly what I said for Top Gun Maverick, the analytical part of my brain turns off, and I'm just a gremlin looking at big lights, fast cars. Like my little gremlin brain is like just being stimulated. So I'm like, this is amazing. I don't care about.
It's pretty hard not to just get swept up in the action as it's happening for sure. But the filmmakers had sort of an unprecedented access to the F1 sort of circuit. They traveled with F1 teams to specific races. I think they had their own garage set up and things for actual races. I mean, the fact that this has the name and branding, a cynical person might interpret this as a 2.5-hour ad, which it absolutely is.
100%. Well, yes.
It is an ad for the sport, but I think it also stands on its own as a film. One thing that I disliked about that, though, you have the real drivers like competing with them, and they get cameos, and some of them get lines and things. You obviously wouldn't recognize them if you're not an F1 fan, but it's a cool idea. One thing that I disliked about it, though, is that it very much feels, because they're having real races in the background and doing these cameos, but not actors playing like the competition, you don't really get any scenes of rivalry off the track where you can see them butt heads with whoever the top racer is or something like that. All of the action that takes place in the movie feels like it's taking place in a sort of weird bubble that doesn't interact with any of the other. In real life, these races like talk to each other like every day. They're out doing press together. They're doing shoots or sharing the track with each other and things. So there's actually a lot of complicated drama and things that arises, especially if you have like a specific rivalry with someone. At the moment, the biggest example is George Russell and Max Verstappen are like.
Those guys
can't be in the same room together without like tearing each other's heads off, which is really fun when they have to be in the same room together like constantly. So yeah, it was an unfortunate thing that was another downside for me for this film, is that like how much of a bubble it feels like. It doesn't quite capture the real feeling of being on the grid with other drivers. Something like the film we'll talk about next, I think, does a better job of that.
Yeah. Let's get into talking about Grand Prix.
Yeah, shall we? Okay.
Yes, please.
All right, that's F1. We both recommend it. Let's take a look at Grand Prix. All right, and we're back to talk about Grand Prix, the 1966 film directed by John Frankenheimer and starring a bunch of people that I maybe didn't know, except for maybe Lucille Bluth from Arrested Development,
Jessica Walters,
and James Garner.
Yes, those are the two that I know.
I think most famously, we probably know him from The Great Escape. But he was also in Space Cowboys, a movie I watched recently.
A great film. Let's talk about that instead.
All right, well, let's do pre-spoiler. I don't know why we're worried about spoilers from a movie that's nearly 60 years old at this point, but
Somebody in our comments.
just in case people want to go in with a clear mind.
And a clear heart.
What would you rate Grand Prix?
Again, this was another surprising one to me. I was not looking forward to it because it's 3 hours. It's from the 60s. It's about drag racing. And I was like, I just got to watch this and get through it. I was so engrossed in this film and the characters and everything about it and the race. I was like, this is, again, my heart wants to give this movie 5 stars. I do not think I can argue that this is equivalent to F1 the movie. This is significantly better. So if I'm going back, I say I would give F1 probably like a 3, like genuinely. And this one Grand Prix, I would genuinely give like a high rating, like a 4 or 5, because it was really good. It was really good. How did you feel?
I loved this film. I'm going 5 stars.
Yes.
Let's get into spoilers because I
Yes.
just want to dive straight into this. Okay.
Yeah.
So Grand Prix comes out in 1966. Similarly to the F1 movie, it got some pretty good access to the 1965 season of Formula One. And I think it also innovated the way that the F1 movie was shot 60 years before the F1 movie was shot.
Yeah.
Like, we were just talking about how great all of the action stuff from Kaczynski is from this recent film. This stuff is even better.
Agreed.
It's using like a lot of the techniques that Kaczynski's using. But man, this is just a crazy, crazy movie.
It's so good. So good.
John Frankenheimer, people might know him from Manchurian Candidate, or his Razzie Award-winning The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Which you've seen.
But he was great at these sort of action epic movies. Another film from the era is The Train, which I haven't seen, but I hear is also really, really excellent. But he shoots this thing like this transformed the way that like cars were shot in movies. Before this, if people have seen like older movies from the 50s, 40s, 30s, in driving scenes, you'll often have the actors sitting in a car and then a rear projection of like, the background moving behind them, so it looks like they're driving. Pulp Fiction does this like famously. It's like a throwback. It puts a black and white screen behind the actors. This film, Frankenheimer like set out to shoot all of the driving as real. Another technique he didn't use that was pretty popular at the time was I'm blanking on what it's called now, but essentially recording the video or recording the film in slow motion and speeding it up to make the driving look faster. He shot all the speed in real time. There's nothing sped up here, which is insane considering how fast some of these shots look and how fast the cars are going.
Yes. One thing that shocked me is how close people are standing to the racetrack. Like, of course, this was back before more safety measures were implemented, but people are standing so close to these guys going 180 miles per hour.
That's just how it was back then.
I believe it. And obviously there's a part in there that discusses the impact of that. But I was like, whoa, guys, can we just step back from the roadway a little bit? They're like in the road. I was like,
yeah. There are some sort of races and things, like even as late as the 80s. If you see like videos of rally car racing in the 80s, just insanely dangerous where the spectators are standing and stuff. So yeah, this was just part of the course for motor racing at this time.
and Can I say this again? This is kind of deviating from what you were just talking about, but
Yeah.
I cried at this one too. I cried at this film too. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Very emotionally.
Was it during some of the driving stuff or?
No, it was.
Okay.
It was. We're in spoiler talk.
We'll get to the melodrama stuff as well.
Sorry, you want to talk?
No.
You keep talking about the how it was filmed. You're right.
I also just really quickly wanted to mention while I'm still on the driving and the way things are shot,
As you should be.
the Saul Bass aspect of this. Saul Bass famously was a title designer for movies. He would do like the intro credits things for a lot of the famous Hitchcock starts. He did Psycho, North by Northwest, Vertigo. Really, really great stuff. In this film, he does the opening credits, yes, and you can see a little bit of it here where he's just like focusing so much on the intricate details of like the cars and like people screwing in nuts and bolts, and he also does montages throughout the movie where during a racing scene, a split screen will come up where, you know, a character is having a discussion or it's almost plays like an internal monologue where a character is saying something that they were being interviewed about, you know, before the race started, but they're just speaking philosophically about driving and about like the danger and like being on the edge of life and death. It's incredible. Like these sequences are some of the best things ever put to film. Okay.
Agreed.
Screed done. I just really had to get
You
like
can
the
keep
driving
talking
stuff.
about it.
There's also individual shots in this. I'm not done.
I knew he wasn't. He lied. He's like, all right, enough about that. But just if I could just talk about
So in the F1 movie we were just talking about from earlier, they did some really cool stuff by putting cameras on the cars, which is hard to do with an F1 car because aerodynamics is such an important thing that if you mess with it too much, the car will go flying off the track. Like it won't stay on the track. Not only will it be tougher to drive, but it can be more dangerous. This is in like 2025, and we have, you know, you can put a small camera on that still looks really great, and you can have you know, from an automated system, you can have the camera turn around, do a whip pan and things like that. Frankenheimer is doing that with a 70 millimeter camera in 1965. Do you know how huge these cameras are?
that's insane.
Just mounting these, like some of these shots, you can see like how low it gets to the ground. And the fact that he can do these remote control shots where they actually control the camera turning on as the car is moving, I'm just like blown away. I don't know what to say.
That's what you were crying at when you cried at the film. You were
genuinely like some of these shots just because of the technique behind everything nearly brought me to tears. Okay.
Good.
Let's talk about like the story maybe if you want to do
And
some of
that's
that.
where I come in because again, what this does, I think, a lot better than F1 for a lot of different reasons is we're combining these brilliant shots of racing with this melodrama and all these relationships and dynamics between these characters. It's just so good. I think it does a really good job of combining, like, of demonstrating that each one of these racers are on the cusp of death every second that they're in these cars and racing. And the pressure of that spreads to every other aspect of the film beautifully. It spreads to the relationships between the racers themselves, their partners, their girlfriends, their wives. And every conversation, you just feel this weight and you feel the stakes of what's going on. And I was just like, I was not expecting that from this freaking film from the 60s about drag racing.
We're speaking about wives and girlfriends. In current F1 today, they call them WAGs because wife and girlfriend. And there's an entire culture around like following the WAGs. I mean, fans are weird. Fans are always going to find weird things to hook onto. But I love that you mentioned the danger and death stuff because that is like the core thing that drives all of these characters. And it's something that makes like this sport completely different from the F1 movie. Because there are so many safety things in F1 now, you know, a lot of the times it's not quite the same as the danger that was present during the 1965 Formula One season. I looked through this because there's a bunch of drivers that are named in the credits of like similarly to the F1 movie, these were real drivers that, they shot scenes of them in their races and things. So they're all credited. Some of them have speaking lines. Graham Hill gets to speak. A famous New Zealand driver gets to speak, which tickled me. Bruce McLaren, who actually started the McLaren team that is one of the oldest teams still running, alongside like Ferrari.
Go New Zealand.
He gets a speaking role in this, which is really cool. Also, the only New Zealand driver to ever have won the world championship is in this, in the background and things. This was actually McLaren's first season ever, and they painted their cars in an unconventional way because they are the ones that play the Japanese team in this. I can't remember what it's called. It's Yasamura, maybe?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yasamura, like that.
Yeah, so for the entire season, they were painted in this weird, like, usually you're supposed to paint your colors based on, like, your country that you're based in, but they had an entirely weird color scheme because they were working alongside the filmmakers for this. Because they were a small upstart team, they needed the money. So that was part of it. Just a couple of New Zealand race car drivers and engineers working on it. So that all of that stuff is really close to my heart. But I wanted to talk about the death stuff because you mentioned it. Sorry, that was a quick tangent.
I want to talk about death.
There are all these drivers named. I went through and I checked. Of the 29 drivers in the credits, 12 of them died in driving accidents. So
that does not surprise me. It's still kind of sad.
Nearly half of the drivers that are featured in this is how dangerous race driving was at this time. Nearly half of them died in driving accidents. Some of them, like, literally the year after this was made, died. So, and looking at from the decade of 1960 to 1970, 17 drivers were killed in F1. So doing the math, it's about 1.7 drivers a year. Which is why it can be a thematic thing for this movie, because there was an aspect of F1 at the time where, fans might have been there looking for a bit of blood and expecting a crash or something dangerous to happen. These drivers were sort of crazy to put their lives on the line every time they went out driving, especially driving in the rain and things. There's one scene in this movie where they drive in the rain that is just absurd, like so dangerous. I can't believe. And so the focus on crashing and stuff sits more here, hits a little harder than perhaps with the F1 movie, where there is a pretty serious crash in that, and it's like pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
But it's also it's something that doesn't happen as often as it does now. It hasn't happened for, I want to say, a decade maybe. There hasn't been a death in Formula One.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And even basically around the 80s, when Ayrton Senna, which is one of the most famous race car drivers of all time, when he died, there were a whole bunch of pushes made to make the sport safer. And so sometimes you still get big crashes where cars will flip over and things, but drivers walk away totally fine because the cars are designed in such a safe way now. Yeah.
But this movie felt like, obviously it discusses death a lot, but it's felt bleaker than that even. Like, it goes beyond that, because I feel like, in a way, when we get to the end of this film, a lot of them are the worst versions of themselves. Like, while they're having this big, what's meant to be a big celebratory moment. And they talk about it a lot. Jean-Pierre Sarti talks, but his character talks about, because he's coming to terms with how absurd it all is.
He's probably seen so many people die during this, like, at this period, this character who sort of had a career, more or less, when he has those, like, in-depth conversations with his love interest about, like, the philosophy of driving and things and the need to win, you feel the weight in the performance, but also with the context of, like, how dangerous the sport is. You feel the weight of, like, every single death that he's seen, and how many times he himself has probably come close to death in a crash or something.
Yeah, I can't talk about it. I'll start crying because if we start talking about it, because he, spoiler alert, does eventually die in this film.
Yes.
I'm still mad about it because they do this ugly foreshadowing of it. Like, earlier in the movie, they foreshadow, like, he talks about that he's tired of this. Like, he asks him, do you ever get tired of being behind the wheel?
Yeah.
And this whole thing of when he sees a crash on the racetrack, other people are pressing the brake, but he's just going faster because he knows that this is when he can get time,
Yep.
and that he just kind of shoves these feelings down about the real like moral like death of this sport and how close they are to dying all the time. And I was like, when he went off, I was like, he's gonna walk away. They gotta let John Pierre Chardy walk away. That's my man.
Yeah.
They did not.
Yeah, I know.
And I was so I was like, kill the Italian guy or some, no, don't kill
And
him.
the crazy thing, and this is very true to how racing was at the time, someone dies on the track and they finish the race. And people are celebrating, like, oh,
Yes.
you won the championship, blah, blah, blah. That stuff happened during this time in racing. Completely absurd. There's a couple of other things I wanted to mention just because the 1965 season is one of the coolest seasons of all time. And so being able to see actual footage from it is really, really special. For one thing, it was the only year of that decade when no one died.
Yay.
So I don't know if it was having a film crew there or something that people were driving safer, or probably just very lucky coincidence. No one died, so massive win there. Also, the driver who won the championship that year, Jim Clark, an absolute legendary British driver. I think he might have been born in Scotland, but nonetheless drove for the UK. He ended up winning that championship and also won the Indianapolis 500 in the same year. And I think he won the Indy championship thing that they have for that as well. So just an absurd achievement that's never been done before, never been done since, and never will be done before or anything. A really this is like the absolute golden age of F1 driving. The only downside is that a lot of people were dying at the same time.
There's just a little bit of a bummer there.
And also the driving supervisor for this film was Carroll Shelby, who was Matt Damon's character in Ford v Ferrari.
Oh,
He was the driving
interesting.
supervisor for this movie, which is kind of fun too.
That's fun. A little tidbit.
You mentioned Sati. I want to talk about some of the other characters as well, because we follow four main drivers, four main characters, I guess, who all sort of represent different kinds of drivers in different periods of their career and different
Attitudes towards
racing. You have the young guy,
Nino.
Nino Borelli,
Yeah.
something like that.
I know this is the only name I'm not really comfortable with. I think I know all the other ones.
Yeah.
Pete Aaron, who's the
Right.
American.
Yes, Pete Aaron. And Scott Stoddard is the British driver.
He kind of freaked me out a little bit. I was like, I'm a little scared of this guy, kind of.
So, Nino Barlini, or whatever his name is, he is the young guy. He's the new up and comer. He thinks he can't die. Basically, he believes.
Says I'm immortal at one point, which is always good. That's always. I was like, oh, he's gonna go off the track into the tree. Nope, you have to kill.
But he
man.
drives completely without fear. You know, he's like new. He's on the come up. He will be a champion one day, if not. He doesn't end up becoming champion in this movie, but clearly he's the next generation sort of thing. And because he drives without fear, he's going to, drive fast and be better than others. We already mentioned Sati. He's sort of at the end of his career, and the fear and the realities of the sport are sort of starting to get to him, and he's driving slower because of it.
And I'm just going to say this, and we can move on, but I have to say it. I have to make this statement clear. He's so attractive in this film. He's so charismatic. Because when you first meet him, you're like, yeah, okay, this is going to be the guy that he's the classic. He drives Ferrari. He's winning. But then you get to know him. And because at first I was like, I'm not going to be schmoozed by this guy. I was schmoozed.
And he gets the best romance, I think, of the movie.
He absolutely does.
And it's because it's that romance has to sell you. Like, you have to believe that romance because it's the one thing that could finally free him from the sport. Like,
don't get me started, boy. Don't get me started.
And we buy it. I mean, clearly,
I bought it.
We both bought it.
Clearly.
It's funny how I was looking through old reviews for this movie, and it got sort of bashed for having like too melodramatic of like character stuff. They were like, the racing's great, but everything else is boring.
Well, why the ladies there too? Why ladies gotta cry?
But I loved all this stuff. The other two characters that I want to get to, Pete Aaron, the American,
love.
He's sort of the villain of the movie.
100% he's the
Yes.
villain. When he won,
He's
I was
all
like,
over the poster. It's, you know,
Ooh.
the highest profile actor, James Garner, with a little bit of like Hollywood prestige to him. He is not a likable guy necessarily.
I wanted him to stay a freaking journalist that just interviewed people
He
on the track.
drives dangerously. The very first like race we see is in Monaco, where he intentionally, he races with his teammate, but because he's slower, he's actually getting lapped by his teammate, which you should just let him through. You should let anyone through if you're getting lapped. There's a rule where they fly a blue flag so you know to move over for them, and if you don't, you get fined, penalized, whatever. But to do it to your own teammate who's winning the race is just crazy. And then because he's doing it, he creates dangerous conditions that ends up having this super severe crash, seriously injuring his teammate who is out of the mix and for
Scott
most of the
Stoddard.
movie.
Yeah, which sets up a good.
And then he cheats on this guy's wife.
And then he takes his wife. He literally causes this crash that cripples him potentially for life. And then he's like, I'm going to take your wife too, by the way. I'm just going to grab her for a second. I was like, gosh darn. I was like, oh my gosh.
But I do like in his story. I mean, I like all of that because I like bad character, like evil characters as well.
You like the drama.
I like a little bit of drama.
Yeah.
The really cool thing about his story is the relationship between him and Toshiro Mifune's character, also a legendary actor in his own right from all of these Akira Kurosawa films, Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, etc. They have a really cool relationship where one is on one of these low tier teams that we talked about, sort of like APX in the F1 movie. And the relationship between a driver and their team and the engineers that work on the car and make things work for them. That was a really cool actual sort of dynamic that played out throughout the movie. I really liked.
Yeah. I like that it sets up because you see Stoddard get in this huge crash where he is very he's injured severely. And so you immediately understand the dynamic between him and Jessica Walters' character, his wife, and how it just sets up. There's this great scene, which I wasn't buying into at first, but then it really got me, where she's whispering in his ear as he's like laying on the gurney. And she's like, I just know you're not going to stop. I know that you're going to get back in the car after this. And I know you're going to keep racing. And I know, and that really sets up the tone for all of these drivers. Cause you know that there's something driving all of them to get back in the car after.
And she as a character or as an actress has a bit of a thankless position because playing it the wrong way, she could come off as an annoying character. I always think of like Skylar White in Breaking Bad, which is like the actual righteous person, the person that the audience should be siding with, but because she's just getting in the way of, you know, the main character getting into action, audiences will on it. But she does such a good job, I think, of capturing in those early scenes where it's perhaps most important, the fact that she really does love him and she just can't watch him
do this to
himself. Exactly.
Yeah. And then those two lovebirds, Sarti and Louise, who is I can't talk about it. It's so sad.
Also, we didn't even mention, this is one thing that's like a notch against the film. Barlini has a romance plot with Françoise Hardy, who's like a famous, you would recognize one of her songs if I played it to you. She's a famous like, French pop musician from the time.
Yes. I know exactly. Okay. You're just saying, you're stealing all these names to me that I was like, wait, did we watch the same film? Yes, I do.
But that romance kind of sucks. I wish they just cut all of that. There's like, I mean, we're talking about this being a long movie. There's like 3 or 4 scenes dedicated to just her hooking up with another American guy and then breaking up with Barlini. That is just the most uninteresting and unrelated to everything else that's happening in the movie.
Half of her lines are her just sitting there looking attractive, being like, I don't do anything. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I'm just a girl. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Helpful. Yeah.
But yeah, all of these characters are great. I'm invested in all of their stories. Stoddard's comeback and the way he's like, he can barely get into the car without being in like severe pain, and he comes back and starts racing hard and beating everyone. It's so awesome. Pete Aaron, the guy you love to hate, the fact he ends up winning the championship in the end, and then it ends with this very bittersweet like shot of him just standing on the track by himself, Like,
And you hear the cars, like they do the shots of where the car should be, but you're just hearing the cars
Yeah.
like start and race, but there's nothing
that
there.
is such a perfect way to end. It captures like sort of the emptiness or perhaps the hollow feeling that someone like him would feel after all of the fanfare is over and everyone's gone. Like, what are you left with? You were champion, but at what cost? Like, someone died on that racetrack.
A friend of the
A friend.
yeah. When they got that black flag out and put it out, I was like, I didn't even know what it meant, but I was like, no, no. I was like, they can't do this to me. They can't do this to me.
Yeah.
Very upsetting. Because she
Incredible
could have
movie.
saved him. If he had just gone with her, he could have been
Yeah, I
alive.
know.
My husband could have been alive.
And on that note,
And on that note, wait, go listen to his songs too, because he's a singer as well.
is he?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know that.
You would know his songs if I played them for you.
Touche.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is not only a fascinating relic for its time, but it's also just a great movie that holds up, I think, in every regard.
Don't be put off just because it's a movie from the 60s that's 3 hours long.
Yeah.
Don't be me. Have an open mind. And it's just a good
Yeah.
movie. Even if you don't like racing, you don't like...
There's an intermission. Take a break. Take a break and come back.
I was not expecting... As soon as I saw Overture, I was like, all right, we got to lock in. We have to lock in. Yeah, I did not know there was going to be an Overture.
Yeah.
But go watch this. And
Yep.
if you want to, you can go see F1. If you think that would be an enjoyable experience.
Yeah. Cool. Well, there we go. Those are the two F1 movies. I think we recommend both of them, but
Grand Prix more.
definitely Grand Prix more. That is an all-timer that I'm so glad that I took the time to watch, or we decided to watch it.
I'm glad that this gave me an excuse to watch because I don't think that's ever a movie I would have put on and watched, but
Yeah. It was between this and The Love Bug, so
it was between this and Cars. Pixar's Cars.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Well, there you go, people. Thank you for tuning in for this episode of Real Talk. We'll be back next week. What is up? I think it's the new Jurassic World, maybe? We got to find something to pair that up with.
I'm really excited.
I can't wait. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.